Now then, welcome to the channel. I'm Andy and I'm an amateur landscape photographer. In this video I'm going to show you the one simple setting that you need to set on your DSLR camera to take some fantastic landscape shots like what I'm stood next to here. I've come to South Cumbria, onto the southwest coast, just south of a little town called Millom, which is one of Cumbria's hidden gems. So without further ado, let's crack on and see how you do it. Welcome. First off, can I start by saying thanks so much to everybody that watched my previous video and subscribed. That was really good. I was pretty blown away by how many people watched that and subscribed to it, so thank you very much. I was talking to one of my friends on Saturday night just after I'd put that video out. My friend Adam, while I was having a beer, and he said that he watched the video but I was using terminology in the video that he didn't understand, and that what he wanted to do with his DSLR that he's just bought is basically be able to take it off auto mode, get out in the field and shoot some nice landscapes. So I said, well, I can do a video on that quite easily because there's a really simple setting that you can use on your DSLR to achieve some great results, and that's aperture mode. So later in this video I'm going to take you down onto the beach and I'm going to show you my camera as I change the settings on it, so you can do the same with yours. And then from there we can move on to actually looking at a little bit of composition maybe. But I think that the first thing that we need to sort of understand a little bit about is the three pillars of photography. The first pillar is ISO, which is basically your sensor in the camera, which is sensitivity to light. So effectively, if you have a low ISO number, maybe 100, your camera is less sensitive to light. So if you've got a bright sunny day, you'd have the ISO down as low as you can get it, maybe 100, or on some DSLRs you'll get it down to 64. If we're shooting when there's less light, so maybe doing some nighttime photography or we're doing some dusk photography, the ISO will be higher. So it may be at 6400, for example. The beauty of the DSLR when you're shooting aperture mode is you don't need to worry about the ISO because the camera will determine what sensitivity setting to put that on. The next pillar is shutter speed, and shutter speed effectively is going to control how much light is going to enter the camera by determining how long it's going to hold the shutter open for to allow the sensor to be exposed to light. And we'd use that maybe if we were shooting some wildlife or fast moving birds, where you want to catch that bird in flight, so you'd want a really fast shutter speed on that to capture its wings so they weren't blurry. But in aperture mode we don't need to worry about shutter speed either. Aperture mode basically is all to do with depth of field, and when we take landscapes we want to really get the greatest depth of field. I'm going to show you a quick slide now that briefly explains what depth of field is all about.
Okay, so basically what we're going to talk about here is depth of field, because that's what aperture is to do with. We measure aperture in f numbers, and effectively if you think of it like the lower the f number, the smaller the zone is going to be in the photograph that's going to be in focus, and the bigger the f number, the bigger the depth of field and the more of the photograph that's going to be in focus. So if we wanted to take, I don't know, a picture of a portrait of a person, and we wanted the foreground to be a little bit blurry and the background to be blurry as well, we would use a really low f number, maybe f1.8 or f3.5. When we're taking landscape photos, quite often we want the foreground and the background to be in focus, and that's why we use a higher f number when we take landscapes.
Okay, so I've set my camera up here to take a picture basically of this seascape here. Composition isn't brilliant, but it's set up basically just to illustrate what I'm going to try and show you. So effectively what we need to do is first we need to knock the camera on. So we flick the on switch there. You can see this camera at the moment is in automatic mode. So the auto green icon there is against the white dot. Now what we want to do is we want to put this camera into aperture mode. So we get the dial here and we basically just flick it until it's to the A, and then it's in aperture mode. Now on this dial here at the back, which I'm hoping you can see, on the left, the circle on the left that says 1 to 500, that's the shutter speed. In the middle, that icon there where it says 3.5 is the aperture setting, or F number, and the dial on the far right is the ISO, or the sensitivity to light of the camera. Now when we shoot in aperture mode, the only thing that we change is the aperture, so it's the dial in the middle. The shutter speed and the ISO will be adjusted by the camera to get us the correct exposure, because all we're interested on this is depth of field. So effectively from the slides before, we know that 3.5, an F of 3.5 is going to be a shallow depth of field. So effectively, if I flick that into live view, you'll be able to see this composition potentially what I'm taking, and I click the rocks down here. The rocks there, we'll take a picture. The rocks will be in focus, and I'll put this photograph up so you can actually see it. The rocks will be in focus, but the background will be blurry, which for landscape we don't really want. We want everything to be perfectly in focus. So if we flick that back into the view, this dial here controls that middle disc on the viewfinder. So if I turn that, you can see that I can go up in F number, and effectively what I'm doing there is I'm increasing my depth of field. So for this photograph here, probably F14 is a big enough depth of field to get the rocks at the foreground, so those rocks there, and also the headland in the distance in sharp acceptable focus. So we'll flick it into live view. We'll just take a quick picture, and again I'll put this picture up. And shooting in aperture priority mode really is that simple. That's all you have to do. You've just got to understand the depth of field that you're working with and what you want. So in landscape generally we'll take photographs between f11 and f16. Okay, there you go. That's how you set your camera up in aperture priority mode. Like I say, I use this probably 90 to 95% for all the photographs that I take of landscapes and even portraits and things like that. What I would say is though, get your camera out of the box, have a play with this in aperture priority mode, see what the various apertures do to your depth of field and the effect it has on the photograph, because that's the easiest way to get to grips with this, because it really is that simple. Thanks very much for watching again, and if you like the content, please subscribe, hit the bell button so you get my future content coming forward. I'm going to take some more photographs now because the light is just absolutely beautiful here. So until next week, thanks very much. Wow, superb.